We're going to draw a tiger now, and we're going to take up most of this 8.5 by 5.5 sheet of paper. To begin with, draw a large circle. It's about 4 fingers across. Make sure to draw it very lightly. Next thing we're going to do is turn it into a sphere by drawing a horizontal oval and an overlapping vertical oval. Then we're going to do a curved square on the front, or rectangle. Draw a couple of diagonal lines out like this, so that what we end up with is what looks like a curved cube on the front of a sphere. This is where the muzzle or the nose is. Next, we're going to draw 2 large circles, which will be the top of his mouth. And then under that, we're going to draw another curved rectangle on either side above the top of the mouth. We're going to draw a circle here and another circle over here. These are the cheeks of the character. I'm going to draw 2 large circles up here for the eyes. And notice the position of the eyes relative to the position of the eyes on an herbivore. On a carnivore, they're in the front. On an herbivore, it would be over here to the right. Up here on the top, draw 2 circles for the ears. And then since the ears have 2 parts to them, almost like human ears, except higher up on the head, we're going to draw 2 shapes like this. Then above the cheeks, and coming down here, we're going to draw what looks like a huge curved shape for the fur. Draw a couple eyebrows. And these cheeks are going to also help to form the shape of the eyes. But for now, we're going to draw 2 large ovals here. One here and one here. Then we're going to draw another smaller oval on the inside for the irises. And then a circle here and here, which are highlights on the eyes. I'm going to smooth this out a little bit. And I'm applying just a little bit more pressure to start fleshing out some of the areas that we're going to darken in. The nose kind of goes around like this, and it curves out just a bit on both sides. Comes down to a point in the middle, but there's also nostrils on it like this. Next, from the tip of the nose here, I'm going to come up here because the nose helps to define this eye over here, which is on the other side of the head as the head's tilted or twisted this way. Then on the inside of the ears, I'm going to point them just a little bit more than we did when they were rounded. and then sort of make them into one shape here. And again, this animal is very fuzzy, so our fuzzy lines are going to help out really well. When you do lines like this, rather than drawing one single line like this, when you do lines like this, they're called dagger strokes. It's one of our definitions. Then on this part of his face, I'm going to draw two shapes like this, which are going to end up being stripes. And these are just guidelines for the stripes because we're going to draw very jagged, very stylized stripes on the side of his face. You can sort of see them on part of it on this side as well. Then for the neck, just notice that the ears were not low enough. So I'm going to actually bring him down a little bit more here. It's okay to make mistakes like this because we're drawing very lightly. I'm applying just a little more pressure. I'm not going to erase any of these lines. All of your construction lines are drawn very lightly. And again, it's okay to make these mistakes. This is just a sketchbook drawing, and it's really sort of a study of what the character looks like. And I'll show you what the original looks like that I drew it from because I'm changing it quite a bit. Just getting the basics of it. Last thing we're going to do down here is draw a very thick neck. It's a very powerful character. Then I'm going to draw a big stripe right here. Another stripe down here. And maybe a note of another stripe there. They're sort of overlapping. Maybe make this one a little bit more shallow to leave this area white in the middle. So this is where their stripe's going to be. Another stripe here, another stripe here, and so on. So that's the basics for the tiger face. Now, a lot of the lines that we're going to draw on here, we're going to draw very fuzzy. But to begin with, we're going to draw a little bit of a shape like this on the side of the eye. I'm going to start applying a little bit more pressure as I draw in the final lines. So I'm just pushing down a little bit harder on the pencil to make my line a little bit darker. This isn't the final. When I get to the final, I'm going to be pressing down very hard. But I'm just sort of getting an idea and a feel for where everything's going to go. Center of the nose comes down, and here's where I'm going to start making it fuzzy. Drawing those dagger strokes. So the fur kind of goes down and out like this to the sides. And when it starts up here, it gets fuzzy and goes down like this. This shape almost looks like a goatee on a beard on someone's chin. So I'm going to make this one really fuzzy. And then maybe put just a few defining fuzzy marks here. And also down here. And again, none of these are finished, completed lines yet, but they're getting very close to where I would like them. The eye comes up over and goes like that. Comes down to the cheek. I'm going to darken in the highlight on both sides. Then I'm going to do another oval inside like this. This is the iris. Excuse me. This is the pupil. I'm going to darken that in. And then the iris, I'm going to shade it in, but it's not going to be as dark or as condensed as the pupil, just so that the highlight shows up a little bit better. Then I'm going to treat this side the same way I did the other. When I do this outline, this area around his eyes are white. So when I start to darken in this area, I want to make it fuzzy. You can almost think of this entire top of his head as eyebrows, the way it's treated on the drawing. So I'm just defining this shape in a very fuzzy way to make it look as furry as possible. Here again, darkening it in, shading it in with strokes that will end up looking like fur. From the eye down to the side of the nose, just going to do a series of lines. So I'm sort of shading and drawing at the same time. Then there's a highlight right here on his face. So I'm going to do a series of lines like this, down to his nose, around his eyes. This part of the ear is completely dark. I'm just going to do a series of lines like this. And then this part of the ear is dark on the outside edge. And again, to make it look fuzzy, I'm just going to do a series of lines to define that part of the ear all the way around to the side of his face. Everything from here, it almost looks like shading, but we're going to add stripes to the head as well. Just sort of doing contour lines that contour around from his eyes to the side of his face. So everything sort of emanates out almost like it's really bright here, really bright light here. And the fur is coming out towards the outside of his head from his eyes. Everything brings attention back to the eyes. The top of the head actually has a little bit of a dent in it here, or an indentation, I should say. I'm going to do the ear the same way over here. Darken it in here. Make it really fuzzy and furry. And then treat the outside of the ear the same way with some dark lines to help define the ear. Then throw in a couple of fuzzy furries in here in the middle. For the muzzle, I'm just going to darken in this area now. And again, I'm following those same contour lines. For the nose, I'm going to darken in this outline. Applying a lot of pressure right now. And when I shade in the nose, I'm going to leave the top part without lines on it to make it look like there's a highlight on the nose. Comes right across here. There is sort of a split in the middle though. Then there's some stripes on his face right here, and you'll see this on a lot of tabby cats. Helps to define the stripes without actually drawing lines, or at least drawing a single line like this. More fuzziness So in this area right here, get these two great big things on either side of his face, big bunches of fur. I'm going to make this fuzzy again, or I should say more fuzzy. Very organic looking. And then for these lines here, I'm just going to go around and do a series of lines to help define that dark area of his fur. Back down towards his mouth, the top of his muzzle. I'm going to do another one here, same way. Make sure to leave a space in here. So that's sort of how you do the stripes on the side of his head. Same treatment over here on this side. Just going to darken in, go over it multiple times. It helps also to define this part of his face. And then all we want to do is continue to darken in the stripes to emphasize them. And I'm applying a super lot of pressure here. Really pressing down on the pencil. Give him some fur on his back. Darken in the fur here. Remember, this is not a finished drawing. This is just a study in your sketchbook. So then to do the stripes on his head, we're just going to draw some stripes like this, leaving a little bit of space in between, but following that same contour to give him some stripes. And again, it almost looks like an eyebrow coming around the side of his head. Just applying a great deal of pressure here. And that's about it for the tiger. So again, make sure to take a picture of this for your sketchbook after you're done drawing it. And this video will be up on Google Classroom for you to review. Just darkening in some areas around here, around his mouth to make it stand out a little bit more. Also to show that there's shadow on this side of the head, because the highlight's coming from here. This tiger, by the way, it's not Tony the Tiger from Frosted Flakes. It's actually a logo for a gas company that used to sell or sells gasoline. He's called the Esso Tiger, or I think it became Exxon. And I'll post a picture where I got the original drawing from so that you can compare that to your drawing. And to this one for that matter. So again, notice how even though you can still see the lines up here,